Well, good evening, brothers. Welcome to a conversation with Richard Rohr. In one way or another, we've all been influenced by Richard, been influenced by his teachings, by his presence, by his life witness, his works, CAC. Each of us in our own way, some or other, have been touched by him or certainly heard of his name. But tonight we want to do something different. In the past, this has been a time that's been given to Richard as a time for him to give a teaching. Or one year we even asked him to tell us about his life, give us a history and a story of from inside out, from the time he was a boy. It was very touching. But tonight we thought we'd look at it from the perspective of a conversation. So Richard, we're going to use the whole guidelines of virtual counsel that you're very familiar with. So just to remind you, and the rest of us, be lean of expression. That'll be the toughest one for you. Secondly is we're going to ask you to do something I know it's going to be a challenge for you, is that's to drop from your head to your heart. So to speak from the heart as a man among men. Second, to listen from the heart as you listen to these questions that have been brewing amongst many of the men. And finally, be spontaneous. You'll be happy to know he doesn't know what these questions are, so no time for preparation. First question we'd like to ask you is, who taught you to be a man? Who modeled for you your concept, your experience of your own manhood?
You know, I have to give the obvious answer, but in this case, I think it's true. I had a very humble, happy father. He was a German farmer. He went to the first to fourth grade twice. He would fail every year and they'd send him back because he had no interest in book learning whatsoever. He just liked to work on the farm. And he stood up on his 14th birthday. And at that time in Kansas, you had to stay in school till you were 14. And he said, "Sister, I'm 14 today." He's in the fourth grade. He's much bigger. "Sister, the laws of Kansas say that you don't have to go to school after 14. I want to thank you very much, but I'm leaving." So there is no doubt. I found my father easy to admire, easy to trust, easy to love. He was probably a 7 on the Enneagram, very positive, happy, liked to dance. In some ways, I'm nothing like him. Yeah, I think I got it from him. And yet, I had an older sister and a younger sister, and then my mother had a beauty shop that Daddy had built onto the house. We lived next to the Methodist home. And so the little blue-haired ladies came to our house all day, every day, getting their hair fixed. So I was surrounded by women. You know, I had this one solid father figure, but I think I went off to the seminary to get away from women. They loved on me all the time. I was loved excessively by women. It was just, they thought I was cute little Dickie, you know. And it was too much feminine energy. It really was, yeah. I only reflected on that years later. Is that an answer to your question?
That's an answer. We're not here to judge you, Richard. We're here to listen. Obviously, growing up on a farm.
Well, not really. It was the cousins had the farm. Okay. Daddy moved to Topeka to work for the Atchison, Topeka, in Santa Fe. So though he thought like a farmer and was raised, it was my uncles who still lived on the farm.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. We have observed, many of us who know you intimately, that your wonderful canine companion, Venus, was such a powerful gift for you. You'd often talk about her and also, in a sense, talk with her, and that you experienced the Creator through her in so many different ways. And when she died a little over a year and a half ago, how it really deeply touched you. Yeah. We're wondering if you could speak to us about that avenue for you in the instinctual realm through a dog, and what her death did to
Yeah.
you.
I've been thinking of her so much these days because she'd always come with me. Here. You know, it's probably exacerbated because I don't have a wife and I don't have children. So to have this presence in my life for 15 years, who would plop next to my bed every night. If I'd get a sick call in the middle of the night, you know, I'd say, you can stay. No, I'm going with you. You know, it was just to have someone who wanted your presence constantly. Talk about being mirrored. She was just a perfect mirror. So excited about my life, in some ways more than I was. That's what it felt. That's what it felt like. And I remember there were times where I'd get a nasty email or letter. I get these hate letters ever so often, where people just try to knife you in, you know. And I remember more than once when I'm sitting there still being disturbed by it, my ego being offended, and literally I'd look over and she knew my emotional life better than, and she's looking up with this attentive, sweet face. Like, maybe I'm reading this into her, I don't know. But it's, how can I help? That's what it felt like. And then she'd come over and rub next to me. You just don't get any better than that, you know? And then when I had to put her down, I don't even want to talk about it. And I know many of you have gone through this. It's just, whoever mirrors you is God for you. It doesn't matter if it's the human world or the non-human world. And Bill has been teaching us that all week. So, yeah, Venus was special. She's buried right in outside my front door. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Richard. Here is a line from Mankind Project, which you're very well aware of, but that is, how would you fill out this sentence? As a man among men, I am called to. How would you fill out that sentence?
It's not going to be profound. I know you want something profound, but I don't.
It's a conversation, it's not a teaching.
My classmates in the seminary say something profound, Richard. You know, it's really just to tell them their deepest identity. And that's why I've so resonated with Bill's words these days. He uses different language, but we're pointing to the same soul. And this is my big disappointment in Christianity, that I think we were supposed to do that. That was supposed to be our job. Telling people they were children of God ontologically, metaphysically, theologically, objectively, use whatever word you want. But none of our churches did it very well, you know. They more reminded us that we were sinners than we were sons of God. How can you miss the point? So in such a major way. So whatever I can do to fill in that gap, I'd like to do. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Richard, you've been involved in what we call men's work for over 30 years. What has this work taught you? How has it touched you? Because not only have literally thousands of men come into your life, but you have touched men at so many different levels of their soul, their heart, and the gift of their lives. What has it done for you, these 30 years of working with men, for men?
Remember, these are just off the top of my head. They're not well thought out. But maybe it's because of the kind of work I do, and starting in the jail here where I was for 14 years, that most men are still little boys. And I don't mean that as a put down. I mean that as a compliment. There's this dear little boy in there, and he just wants to be freed and trusted and named and validated. And it's just so delightful to me when they'll let me see that. And I first learned that in the jail when I'd be alone in a cell with a guy. And they'd invariably call me Padre here in New Mexico. And I never asked for that title, but you could just tell, as one told me one time, I need to say that. I said, I don't need to be called that, but I need to call you that. And they'd almost desire to take on that boy role, to reveal that boy, and to hope that I would say that boy was good, as you were just saying right before. So that all this bluster, all this machismo is just fake. And now we see it in the head of state of our country, just silliness, absolute silliness. And that most of the country can't see through that. Tells me how immature we still are and why our work is so needed. It's just, now I'm preaching, but yeah, go ahead.
It just seems you can't help yourself. You know, I can speak for myself, and I would dare say for many men, but I remember you were the first priest I met that I felt so easy calling you Father. You have such a gift to father us. And for me, the way I experienced that was you spoke not to my head, you spoke to my heart and my soul. What does that feel like to you as a man to hear and receive the love, not just the admiration, but the love and the deep feeling of being cared for by a community of men, not just the men here, but the men for many, many years in your life? What does that feel like to you?
Well, can I start by telling them the story?
Yes, you can tell the story.
77, was it?
75.
That early, wow. Yeah. I was given the retreat to the seminarians at Camarillo, California, and I was invited to give it to the philosophy students, the college students. And maybe the second year, they said, there's a guy sneaking in here who doesn't belong here. You were about to be ordained, I guess.
Shortly, yes.
You were already in theology. And you were sitting out there, this eager young man, just eating up whatever I was saying, breaking the rules, apparently. You weren't supposed to be there.
Which is excellent for a 6. I needed to do that.
Yeah, isn't that neat? What was your question? I
said, trying to get you into the heart.
Oh, yeah.
What does it feel like to hear, to receive, to be loved by these men, and to be called Father?
Yeah. I can't even process it. It would be too much. I've got to almost block it and not believe it, because I take myself way too seriously. If I let myself take myself as seriously as some people do, yeah. Oh my God, I'm narcissistic enough, but I think it would be unstoppable narcissism. So I really do. I have to realize they need to believe that I am this. And it's always saying more about them. You've heard me say this in past tapes and all. People who think I'm loving are always loving people. This whole thing of projection is so obvious. And people who think I'm terrible are usually terrible people. But it's true. That I say, this has nothing to do with me. Well, 2 years ago, Terry introduced me here with the most sympathetic introduction I'd had in years. And he said, how do you deal with all the projections? Positive, overly idealizing me, and negative, who make me a demon from hell, And so that's why I've got to block it all and not take any of it too seriously. Yeah.
Richard, thank you for being with us here this whole weekend. We've really enjoyed your presence, and you've had an opportunity to listen to Bill. We know that you've read his material.
Years ago.
What about this weekend? How has it impacted you personally? And again, we're asking you to step into the heart.
Because, I'll go off in my theologizing. Well, I got to be honest. At the beginning, I said, I know all this stuff. Isn't that terrible of me? I've heard all this, Oh yeah, we learned that 8 years ago, and I've stole some of it like the loyal soldier, I present it like it's my idea. Of course, Bill admits he learned it from the Japanese too. If it's wisdom, it's common domain. It really is. Yeah. That's what we mean by the collective unconscious, or the force field of the Holy Spirit. No one can claim it and say it's mine. What I found most helpful was his second talk this morning, which really challenged those of us who are, of course I'm not involved in it so much anymore, but who are building the rites of passage, to really encourage us to pull back and say, what is our real goal? Beyond, we see a whole bunch of turned on men after every rite of passage, and so we go home feeling, well, that was a success. I think Steve Gamble and I said that after every one, didn't we? We say, this was the best. This was the best, as we'd be driving back to Albuquerque from Ghost Ranch. You do know that he and I did the whole thing by ourselves for the first 10 years. Yeah. We were young then, weren't we? Had so much energy. God, I wish I had that energy again. Stephen still does. He can keep going now. So I really felt he gave us an important piece, that it's time for us to pull back, not to stop doing the rites, but to really ask ourselves, what is the name of success? Just because everybody felt good on Sunday afternoon, and is it really a rite of passage? Is it really an initiation rite? The competence you see, in people like Ned and Terry and Chris, who all got to talk tonight, I have no doubt they're going to come to some very good elevated thoughts and elevated plans for how to do this better, but not to define better in a false way or a narcissistic way.
Well said. Looking back in your many years of men's work and care for this work of men internationally, is there anything that you would change, either in your approach or the energy, where you put your energy? In other words, what have you learned looking back that you might
particularly in
change?
regard to the men's work?
Particularly in regards to men's work.
I think my gift, as always is the case, became my liability too. And because I was, forgive me, such a one-man show, I think I rode on that too long. And when I come back and see how the team does it so much better, without me being this little superstar, I wish could have trusted that far earlier, that I don't have to keep myself doing it all, So I needed more humility earlier. I needed to learn how to share power earlier. We finally learned it, but it was only because of competent people like yourself who came into the circle, and all I had to do was listen to you guys, and God, they get it. They don't need me anymore. So it wasn't hard to pull back, but I just could have done it earlier, I think. Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to ask you, and I know this is a real challenge for you, but the great teachers always can summarize their teaching within a few words, a few sentences, others a few paragraphs. In all the many years that you've been teaching, what is the core theme or message that you want us listeners to get and to incorporate into our own lives so that we can carry on the message in greater freedom, greater love, or compassion for the larger world?
You know, Bill gave me a wonderful phrase this afternoon or this morning. To help the two worlds touch. I really think our Christian word for that is Christ. Christ is the image, the metaphor for where the two worlds touch. I've always trusted since the beginning animas is more psychological, mythopoetic language. I probably because I'm educated in it, I prefer theological language, but I think they need one another. You know, it's no good to have a good theology if you don't have a good anthropology. If you don't have a good image of the human person, you can have all the wonderful words about God or Jesus you want, and it doesn't mean very much. It doesn't transform very much. So someone asked me that years ago. They said, would you put it in 2 words? Now, these are 2 big words, forgive me. I said, yeah, I'd sum up all my teaching, incarnational, embodied, as you know, mysticism. It's the same thing. Those incarnational mysticism, that meeting spirit in matter. And that's why I never had any trouble supporting or validating Animas's work, because I felt they were doing that. They didn't use my God language, but they don't have to. Very often they led people to touch upon it, and we all know, those of us raised in the world of religion, that a lot of times the God language gets in the way. You think because you use the God word, you've had the experience. And so incarnational mysticism, helping the two worlds to touch, matter and spirit. Yeah.
Richard, you sound like a Franciscan.
They form me.
Yeah, exactly. Could you speak to that again from the heart? Francis would love you if you could do this. Could you speak from the heart about what Franciscan experience has done for you in terms of living your life as a man? How it's really introduced you and helped you embrace the material world with respect?
Well, it's major. You know, they educated me for 13 years, but educated, I don't know that I did it as well as they educated me to do it. But we're always told we're not smart guys like the Dominicans and the Jesuits. Our job is to bring the head down into the heart and speak from this embodied place. And I think they did teach me, I'm not saying I did it, but they taught me that was the path. Yes. And what is still very countercultural for many people, but I say it in the booklet I just wrote on how to understand the Bible. I don't trust any enlightenment or any person who claims to be saved or superior, soulful, if this hasn't led them to trust what Jesus would call the least of the brothers and sisters. If this doesn't lead you to the marginalized, to the edges, to the immense suffering of this world, I think it's garbage. I don't care how enlightened talk you talk. And I learned that, well, first from Jesus, but then from Francis, who just drove it home, you know. And I think that's a great danger in America. This upper class spirituality that doesn't liberate you enough from yourself to see the mystery where you don't want to see the mystery. People who can't pay you back, people who can't build up your name, what Jesus called the least of the brothers and sisters. So I think that more than anything else is what the Franciscans gave me. They didn't call it a different politics, but it is a different politics. It's a very different attitude toward money and power and war and all those things that, as Bill has been saying this week, our country is totally invested in. So I'm not saying we always did it real well, but that was the Franciscan vision that captured my heart. That it was earth-based, what we now call creation spirituality, brother, sun, sister, moon. And it always had space to include the outsider, the other, the non-important person, those without health care or whatever it might be. So that's in the church, that's our structural position. And of course, that's why we were so excited when the Pope took the right name. That's right. And it took us 2,000 years for a Pope to take the name Francis, but he gets it. He really does get it. And he's a Jesuit, which is all the more amazing.
Richard, you've often referred back to your many different hermitage experiences and how deeply you feel the experience, the touch of the Creator so near to you. Could you share with us the significance that has been to you in forming your own, not only naming of God, but experiencing of God? Let me explain what I mean. I have definitely noticed a difference in the way that you've been preaching and teaching the last 12 years. Something's happened inside of you. And I'm just wondering if maybe it goes back to those hermitage experiences.
Major, yeah.
Could you speak to that?
Yeah. Well, it was a part of our Franciscan vocation. Extended times of solitude in nature, and more retreat houses around the country are building hermitages now to allow that. I did, 4 in California, several in Arizona. I always wanted to be in a place where I could walk a lot during the day and even in the middle of the night. But there is something about extended period of not talking, not seeing TV, radio, that you just fall into a deeper place where you begin to know things. It's not believing things anymore. It's knowing things. And that's another thing I love about Anima's work. I think what Bill and the helpers are giving you is the capacity for inner experience. And most Americans don't have much capacity for inner experience. They just have external beliefs. I believe this, I believe that. And oh God, there's no grounding to it, no love to it, no breadth to it. So I would say you're absolutely right. The hermitages, which I did almost every year for my middle years, were a major part of forming me. The seminary that was much better than the first seminary, and I know you would understand that too. Yeah, first seminary just gives you a bunch of words. Yeah, that's all.
This one is really putting you on the spot, and I'm just going to say it directly. I think part of the beauty of helping us men to be able to enter the vision that you've presented and offered, not just theologically, but experientially, through the rites of passage, is to encourage us to go and stand before the divine and trust that the Creator will appear in one way or another. Could you share with us an experience of God that has deeply touched you and moved you to some aspect of transformation in your own life, to the degree that you feel safe with this group?
Well, I hesitate to give this one, but it slipped into my mind right now because it makes me sound like I'm special. And I don't think I am, but I'm glad the good Carmelite is here. Where are you, Bob? Behind me, okay. He can back this up, that this happened. Was that 4 years ago, Bob? Bob, who's a good Carmelite, invited me because he knew I loved the Carmelite mystics, if I would join him and several others, just 5 of us, to visit Lisieux in France, where the saint we call the Little Flower, Little Therese, and he always knew she and Julian were my favorite feminine mystics. And then we went to Spain and visited the house and location of Teresa of Avila, so the 2 Teresas, and then John of the Cross right around the corner. So these are 3 great Carmelite luminaries. So because Bob I hope you don't hate me for saying this, but he's a 3 on the Enneagram, and they know how to raise money, you know. It comes natural to them. So he recognized that one reason all these poor Carmelite nuns in Normandy or northern France, which is very damp, were dying of tuberculosis is for centuries they never had any central heating. You know, and wasn't there one toilet on each floor? Am I saying it right? In the whole building for how many nuns? I mean, these women, 22, these women lived really poorly. So God bless this good American 3. He raised money and he went over there and got central heating for them. So as a result, when he returns to Lisieux, he's treated well. The American priest who gave them bathrooms and central heating. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but apparently before I got there, you had said something to these nuns about you were bringing a famous American priest, and could he see the very room where Therese died, which is the infirmary room where she lived the last 3 months of her life. If you've read her autobiography, it's quite telling. It really is something you should treat yourself to someday. She only died in 1897, so in many ways she's a contemporary woman by most Catholic standards. Anyway, so the 5 of us, she takes us in the room, this lovely Canadian nun who knew English, and I'm standing between the window that Therese looked out of. The bed where she died is in between. Sister and Bob and the other 3 are on the other side of the bed. She's starting to describe, and then she stops. This is the way I remember it, correct me if I'm wrong. And she says, "We have a visitor." And we all looked at one another. And sure enough, there was some noise behind these complicated French windows. You had to open them inside and in between and out. And because I'm closest to the window, she says, open the window, open the window. You never disobey a nun, particularly in full habit. And so I'm struggling to open the window. And I don't know what point it began, but I swore I was not touching the ground. Now I know what they maybe mean by levitation. I did not levitate, and don't dare tell anybody that. But I felt like I did, you know. And I had to stabilize myself on the windowsill. I guess you could see that from standing behind me. And this nun, let it out, let it out. Well, what? Well, then we look in the corner of the window, is this beautiful orange and yellow butterfly, which he told me later, how did that get in there, you know? It couldn't, this room is hardly ever entered, you know. How did this butterfly get in there? So now I'm trying to open the outer windows. I'm still levitating. All the blood is out of my head. I'm ecstatically happy. I don't know what about, but I'm just happy. And knowing that I'm inside of some vortex. So the butterfly flies out. I turn around, and I guess my face was white. I don't know, but yeah. But you're all looking at me like, what just happened? They knew something had happened. Then this wonderful Canadian nun, who was the archivist in that community, she comes running over, and you know those old habits that nuns have, they sort of create a privacy booth. If you went to Catholic school, you know what I mean, and they'd come up and they'd correct you inside. Well, she comes up like that, you know, and she says, I don't know who you are, but I knew I was supposed to bring this morning. Put it in your pocket and don't tell the others what I just gave you. So I slide it in my pocket. We go around Lisieux the rest of this beautiful spring morning. I think it was April 3rd. And I'm just waiting to get back to my room to find out what it is. I'm not supposed to tell them. You don't disobey a nun. So Well, when I finally, after lunch, get back to the room, I take it out of my pocket. Only Catholics will understand this, but it's what we Catholics call a first-class relic. All right, Lutherans don't hate us for it. Okay, but when you have the very bone of a saint, it's somehow, well, it's incarnational mysticism. It really is. There's an embodied piece of spirit here, and so in my little house here in Albuquerque, I have a little piece of the bone of Therese. So I inquired later and reflected later and journalized later, why did that happen? And I was floating the rest of the day. But she felt, and I felt too, that part of my work with whatever remaining years I have is to try to get out her message of what she called spiritual littleness. She's called the little flower because she says, we don't have to be big flowers. We just have to be a little flower. And that might seem sentimental, but it's the kind of metaphor that Bill's been talking to us about. So that for me lasted for months. I journalized pages and pages on what that moment meant to me. I don't think it meant I was any better than anybody else, any holier than anybody else. And I still stand in wonderment, why did that happen to me? Because I know it was a happening. It wasn't anything I generated, you know? And as quickly as it came, it left. But I can never forget it. So that's one of my later life spiritual experiences.
Well, thank you. It sounds to me like, using Bill's words, literally the wild mystery broke through this closed room to reach out and touch you in a profound way.
Perfect, yeah. That's right. What, Bob?
You never left the ground.
Oh, you knew from behind. I never left the ground.
Well, shifting gears, Richard, you shared with a few of us, sometimes been in public, but you've had some health challenges in the last several months. Would you like to speak to that? And particularly about the lessons that you're learning about not only illness, but the dying process.
Yeah, since being here last year, I've had a heart attack a couple days before Christmas. And then the prostate cancer, which I thought was dealt with, has returned. So, I think they seem to be saying I can most assuredly have 2 years more, maybe a few more than that. And, I never expected to live till 75. So it's funny, it's not a dramatic thing. It's not a scary thing. If there is any adjective I'd give to it, and I'm sure many of you have faced this, so I'm not just talking for myself, it's sort of sad. And I'm not even sure the character of that sadness, but this thing called my life is over. There's just some sadness about that did I do what I was supposed to do? Did I do it for the right reason? And of course what comes back to me is no. And yet, grace and mercy flow over that. So once I know that I don't have to worry about me saving myself by my correct behavior. And any of you who know the Enneagram, I'm a 1 on the Enneagram, and that's our big thing. We try to do it right. We try to do it perfect. And now I'm able to look back at my 75 years and to realize even my best things were for mixed motives and for false motives. If people really knew what I was like, they wouldn't read my books at all. But yeah, I'm ready. I don't know when it's going to come, and I sure can't complain. I'm not in any pain or anything, but I'm just tired, very tired, most of the time. As any of you who are on meds know, I think I have to take 10 different pills every day. And just the medicines make you so tired, But it's a small price to pay. So I hope that's...
Thank you. Let me just push a little bit more if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
It's a process, as you have alluded to, but in the process, the lessons that you're learning in order to embrace the final death, what's coming up for you?
Well, my self-accusing voices, and maybe I hope this relieves you to know, with all I supposedly know and have experienced, how my self-accusing voices of, you're a phony, you're a hypocrite, if those people really knew what you were like, that you're not the great saint they think you are, those voices still accuse me in terms of not fear of God, but fear of self, I guess it is. It isn't major. I'm happy. I'm happy almost all the time. But there's still these endless accusing voices that only a fellow one would understand. They never stop. But I do now have the confidence to see them as temptations. Yeah, demons, as the medievals would have called them. And I don't believe them, but they're still there for a few minutes. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Switching gears just a bit, in terms of this whole process, you were the one that first introduced, at least that I'm aware of, in this environment, that one of the signs of a healthy elder is that when you can laugh at yourself.
Yes.
Laugh at our foibles and not hold on to cynicism or bitterness or angers that continue to be fed and nurtured. Do you find yourself at this stage in life able to laugh at yourself?
Oh,
more?
yeah. Okay. Oh, without any doubt. Yeah. That comes easily. I mean, I'm not a humorous person. I wish I were. I don't know, as Bill said, I don't know how to tell jokes. You never hear me tell a joke. I wish I could. But even when I tell them, they're not funny. They're not. It's just they fall flat, Shows how we respond to one another's energy. Where a 7 can say something that's hardly funny at all, and we'll all laugh hilariously. It's all about the energy. So yeah, I don't have any trouble laughing at myself. And I think, I'm glad you brought it up, I think it's one of the most simple criteria of mental, emotional, spiritual health. It's what worries me about Washington, D.C. Absolute inability to laugh at themselves. Absolute. I don't think I've ever seen him laugh at himself. He's incapable of it, That tells you for sure he's a non-elder.
Richard, Bill has been giving us a lot of wisdom in these days to chew on, to reflect, to talk about, to journal and to ritualize. What wisdom would you like to leave us this evening as we get ready to go to sleep?
God, you're the profound one. You asked, what am I saying? What wisdom? Don't trust the negative voices. I don't just mean the negative voices about you, but about others, about life. They're coming from a not good place. God never motivates you by shame or guilt or negativity. That's just not the way grace works. And so to trust the voice that is encouraging you, that is affirming you. Now maybe to some of you that just sounds like, oh, there he is, the power of positive thinking. It's much deeper than the power of positive thinking. It's drawing from a completely different well. And in the Christ book that's going to come out in March, what I'm trying to do more than anything is rebase Christian spirituality in Genesis 1 instead of Genesis 3. If you're familiar with Genesis 1, it says, it was good, it was good, it was good, it was good, it was very good. 5 times in a row in the first and second chapters. And for some damn, and I mean damn reason, most of Western Christianity decided to start the narrative with Genesis 3, eating that stupid apple. And we just obsess about that, you know. We like to start with a problem. And what I've cited in myself is when I get negative or trust the negative voices, that's what I'm doing. I'm dropping into the problem-solving mode. And so I create a problem in my mind and in my emotions. She's wrong, that's bad, he's no good. And then I rush in the white knight to solve it with my big theology or whatever it might be. So trust the positive and don't think it's just the power of positive thinking. I think it's drawing from creation-based spirituality. It was good, it was good, it was good, it was good, it was very good, you know. And if we would have made that the starting place of Christian spirituality, we wouldn't have so many angry Christians today, you know. No. So I'll stop at that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Richard,
Thank
for
you.
your wisdom, your life, your ministry.